last year, North Carolina gained over 100,000 new residents. That's not a typo. While California and New York hemorrhage population, NC just keeps quietly absorbing them. Teachers, retirees, remote workers, people who finally did the math on what a mortgage actually costs. So what's the magnet? What do they know that you don't? And why does the last reason on this list explain more than the other 7 combined? We're breaking down the 8 reasons North Carolina keeps pulling people in, starting with the one everybody notices first. Number 8, the climate. North Carolina has commitment issues with weather, and honestly, that's the appeal. You get 4 actual seasons here, not the Midwest version where winter lasts 7 months and summer arrives like a fever dream, not the Florida version where it's just hot and slightly less hot with hurricanes. North Carolina gives you fall foliage that rivals New England, springs that don't skip straight to 90 degrees, and winters that remind you what a jacket is without requiring a survival strategy. The geographic range is what makes it work. The mountains around Asheville and Boone see legitimate snow, enough for skiing at Sugar Mountain, enough to feel like winter means something. Meanwhile, Wilmington and the Outer Banks stay mild enough that December golf isn't delusional. Charlotte and Raleigh split the difference. You'll see snow a few times a year. It'll melt by Tuesday, and nobody has to own a snowblower. According to climate data, Raleigh averages 46 days above 90 degrees Fahrenheit annually. Compare that to Phoenix at 169 days, or Houston at 99. The humidity exists, let's not pretend otherwise, but it's not the soup-thick air of the Deep South. One transplant from Minneapolis put it perfectly. I moved here because I wanted seasons without suffering. February in North Carolina is inconvenient. February in Minnesota is a threat. The trade-off, spring pollen. Every March, your car turns yellow and your sinuses file for bankruptcy. Locals call it the pollening. You'll learn to check the pollen count the way other people check the weather. But here's the thing, you can complain about pollen from your porch in March. You can't complain about a polar vortex from your porch because you die. And if weather's your first consideration, wait until you see what happens when we factor in cost. Number 7, cost of living. North Carolina isn't the cheapest state. Let's get that out of the way. You're not buying a Victorian mansion for $47,000 like some of those Affordable America videos suggest, but the math here looks different than what people are used to on the coasts. Zillow data shows the statewide median home price hovering around $340,000. That sounds like a lot until you realize that's roughly half what you'd pay for a starter home in the Boston suburbs. In the Bay Area, $340,000 might get you a parking space with a nice view of someone else's house. But it's not just about purchase price. It's about what you get for the money. According to the Missouri Economic Research and Information Center, North Carolina's overall cost of living index cites at 94.9, meaning it's about 5% below the national average. Housing specifically comes in at 87.6, which is where the difference shows up most. Groceries, utilities, transportation, all within a few points of national norms. The daily cost of existing doesn't jump. The metros have gotten pricier. Charlotte's seen significant home price appreciation since 2020, and Raleigh isn't far behind. But secondary markets like Greensboro, Winston-Salem, and Fayetteville still offer median prices in the $250,000 to $290,000 range for a 3-bedroom with a yard in areas with decent schools. A realtor in the Triangle told us off the record, "Half my clients are from New Jersey. They show up expecting sticker shock and end up confused that they can actually get a house with money left over for furniture." People relocating from high-cost metros often describe the same experience. The numbers feel unfamiliar. Whether that translates into a better financial position depends on individual circumstances, income, debt, lifestyle choices, but the sticker prices themselves create options that didn't exist where they came from. The cost of living picture gets people to look, but the jobs are what gets people to stay. Number 6, the job market. When people hear North Carolina economy, they think Research Triangle, tech, Apple's campus, and RTP, and that's real. The Triangle added 74,000 jobs in 2023 alone, and tech salaries averaging $105,000 are pulling software engineers from both coasts. But here's what the headlines miss. North Carolina's economy isn't a one-trick show. It's got backup singers, a horn section, and 3 different encores. Charlotte is the second largest banking center in the United States. Bank of America, Truist, Wells Fargo's East Coast operations. Financial services employ over over 80,000 people in the metro. Walk through uptown Charlotte at lunch and the uniform is obvious. Patagonia vest, AirPods, iced coffee in January. If you work in finance, compliance, or fintech, Charlotte's hiring. If you own stock and dry cleaners that handle dress shirts, Charlotte's your market. The Triad, Greensboro, Winston-Salem, High Point runs on manufacturing and logistics. This is where things get made and shipped. Ralph Lauren, Honda Aircraft, Amazon Fulfillment centers the size of small towns. Blue-collar wages here outpace the national average by 12%, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. A machinist in High Point takes home more than a machinist in Ohio and pays less for the house. Asheville carved out a niche in healthcare and creative industries. Mission Hospital is the largest employer, but the city also supports a brewery density that rivals Portland and an arts economy that somehow pays rent for people. One recruiter in Raleigh told us, "I place engineers from California who took a pay cut on paper but came out ahead after housing. I place people from Ohio who got a raise and better weather. The math depends on where you're coming from, but the jobs are here either way." What this means for anyone considering the move, you're not betting on one industry. The pandemic proved that. When hospitality collapsed nationally, NC's manufacturing and finance sectors kept hiring. When tech layoffs hit in 2023, healthcare and logistics absorbed the talent. According to the North Carolina Commerce Department, the state unemployment rate has stayed below 4% for 30 consecutive months. Job postings in 2024 exceeded pre-pandemic levels by 18%. One economist described it as distributed resilience. Not sexy terminology, but when you're deciding where to build a life, your career options don't evaporate if one sector hiccups. Matters more than a catchy phrase. And speaking of building a life, there's a demographic that's been paying attention to North Carolina longer than the tech transplants. Number 5, the retiree migration. North Carolina is aging faster than almost any state in the country, but not because people are getting old here. They're arriving old on purpose. Census data shows adults 60 and older represent the fastest growing demographic segment moving into North Carolina. The Raleigh-Durham Metro, Charlotte, Asheville, and the coastal counties around Wilmington all rank in the top 50 nationally for retiree inbound migration. This isn't a trickle, it's a pattern. So what's pulling them? When researchers survey recent retiree transplants, the same factors surface repeatedly: climate, healthcare access, proximity to family who already moved, and, according to multiple studies, favorable treatment of retirement income compared to where they left. The specifics vary by individual situation, and everyone's financial picture is different, but the pattern is consistent. People nearing retirement are running their own numbers and landing on North Carolina. Picture this: Tuesday morning in Pinehurst, 68 degrees, light breeze, and you're on the back nine before most people have finished their first coffee. Your foursome includes a retired surgeon from Philadelphia, a former Ford executive from Detroit, and a guy who did something with insurance in Hartford and hasn't elaborated further. Nobody's in a hurry. The clubhouse opens at 11, so does the first cocktail. The geography helps. Pinehurst built an entire identity around golf retirement, 36 holes per square mile, plus the medical infrastructure to support an aging population. Brevard calls itself the land of waterfalls and markets directly to active retirees who want hiking trails more than early bird specials. Southern Pines offers the small town version of the same lifestyle. Wilmington and the Brunswick County beaches pull people who want water views without Florida insurance premiums or hurricane roulette every September. The healthcare network matters more than people admit when choosing where to retire. Duke Health, UNC Health, Atrium, Novant, 4 major hospital systems with specialists, research programs, and regional satellites. You're not driving 3 hours for a cardiologist. That's a factor when you're planning to age somewhere. Military retirees cluster around Fayetteville and the Fort Liberty corridor. That community has its own gravity. People who serve together, retiring near each other, building a social infrastructure that doesn't require starting from scratch at 62. One Pinehurst transplant from Connecticut put it simply: "I visited 6 states before deciding. North Carolina checked boxes the others didn't. The reasons are personal, but it worked for me." That's the theme across every interview. People running their own calculations and arriving at the same destination. What those retirees discover once they get here, along with everyone else, is a food and drink scene that nobody warned them about. Number 4. The food. North Carolina has a culinary identity crisis, and that's the best thing about it. Start with barbecue. Actually, start with the argument about barbecue. Eastern-style NC barbecue uses the whole hog, vinegar-based sauce, no tomato. Lexington-style Piedmont focuses on pork shoulder with a tomato vinegar hybrid. These two camps have been feuding since before the Civil War. People have opinions, strong ones. Your first month in the state, someone will ask you to pick a side. Choose wisely, but barbecue is just the headline. The food scene runs deeper than national coverage suggests. Asheville landed on Bon Appetit's radar years ago and never left. Farm to table isn't a marketing gimmick there. It's just how restaurants operate when you're surrounded by organic farms. Corte has been serving Spanish tapas that rival Barcelona since 2011. Chai Pani turned Appalachian Indian fusion into something that actually works. Charlotte's restaurant growth outpaced population growth 3-1 between 2018 and 2023. The South End and Noda neighborhoods now support James Beard-nominated kitchens alongside taco trucks and Ethiopian spots that don't compromise for suburban palates. Durham, once just the other city in the Triangle, emerged as a culinary destination unto itself. Mateo, Mothers and Sons, Dame's Chicken and Waffles. The farmers market downtown pulls more weekend traffic than most shopping malls. And then there's the drink situation. North Carolina has 400 plus craft breweries, ranking 8th nationally in brewery count. Asheville alone has over 30 within city limits. Sierra Nevada and New Belgium both built East Coast production facilities here, not for tax breaks, but for water quality and proximity to the raw ingredients. The Yadkin Valley wine region produces award-winning whites and increasingly respectable reds, mostly from Chardonnay, Viognier, and Cabernet Franc grapes. 40-plus wineries operate there now. It's not Napa, but nothing costs Napa prices either. Picture this. Saturday afternoon in Durham, you're 3 oysters deep at the farmer's market, holding a local cider, watching your kid chase another kid around the fountain. Your bill for the afternoon, $40. Your equivalent experience in Brooklyn, $110, and a subway ride home. Food keeps people happy. Geography keeps people interested. Number 3, geographic variety. 4 hours. That's the drive from the Blue Ridge Parkway to the Outer Banks. Mountains to ocean. Elevation 6,000 feet to sea level. In the same state. This isn't just a fun fact for the tourism board. It's a lifestyle infrastructure that changes how people think about where they live. Picture this. Friday afternoon, you leave Charlotte after work. By 7 p.m., you're on a cabin porch in Blowing Rock, watching fog roll through the valley. Temperature 15 degrees cooler than the city you left. Sunday morning, you drive home through small towns selling apple cider and suspiciously cheap antiques. Monday, you're back at your desk. That weekend cost you 6 hours of driving and 0 airplane anxiety. Or flip it, same Friday, different direction. You're in Wrightsville Beach by dinner, feet in the sand, watching the sun drop into the marsh behind you. Sunday, you drive back with a cooler full of shrimp someone's uncle caught that morning. The ocean was 3 hours away. Now it's in your freezer. Want to ski in January? Beach Mountain is 3 hours from Charlotte, less from Winston-Salem. Want to surf in July? Same drive, opposite direction. Want to kayak in April, hike in October, or sit on a dock pretending you're going to fish? Pick a direction. Something fits. The variety creates options that compound over a lifetime. Move to Raleigh for a job in your 30s. Raise kids near good schools and reasonable commutes. Retire to the mountains or the coast, or a lake in between without leaving the state. Your doctors, your accountant, your driver's license, your voting registration all stay put. U-Haul data consistently ranks North Carolina in the top 5 for inbound moves. But here's what the data doesn't capture. Internal mobility. People relocate within the state as life changes. Charlotte to Asheville when the corporate grind loses its charm. Wilmington to Chapel Hill for better schools. Outer Banks to Winston-Salem when you want more restaurant options and less sand in your car permanently. The climate bands matter too. Asheville averages 10 degrees cooler than Charlotte in summer. Meaningful if you're heat sensitive but don't want to leave the state. Wilmington stays 15 degrees warmer than Boone in winter. Meaningful if you've decided snow is decorative, not functional. And the lifestyle niches are real. Blowing Rock for money and mountain views, Beaufort for maritime history and seafood that was swimming that morning, Davidson for walkability and boutique college town energy, Southern Pines for golf and a retiree infrastructure that doesn't feel like waiting to die. One phrase kept coming up in interviews: room to grow, not geographically, economically. Population growth is real, but personally, North Carolina has enough variety that reinvention doesn't require starting over. That's the map, but the map only matters if the metros function. Number 2, the metros. Charlotte has 900,000 people in the city proper, 2.7 million in the metro. Raleigh-Durham sits at 2.1 million. These are real cities. Major league sports, international airports with direct flights to Europe, Fortune 500 headquarters, hospitals that handle complex surgeries without airlifting you to Atlanta. But they don't feel like real cities in the ways that wear people down. Charlotte's average commute, 26.8 minutes. That's below the national average. Raleigh's even shorter at 24.1 minutes. Compare that to LA at 31 minutes, or the DC Metro at 34. The congestion exists. Don't take I-77 through Charlotte at 5:30 p.m. unless you enjoy existential reflection, but it's manageable. Most people aren't losing 2 hours daily to windshield time. The airport infrastructure punches above its weight. Charlotte Douglas is an American Airlines hub, offering direct flights to 175 destinations. RDU handles 14 million passengers annually with a terminal that somehow doesn't feel dystopian. You can get to New York in 90 minutes, London in 7 hours, and the parking doesn't require a second mortgage. Dining, entertainment, professional services, they're here at scale. But the metros haven't reached the density where basic errands become half-day ordeals. You can still get across Charlotte in 25 minutes. You can still park at the Raleigh Farmers Market without circling for 40 minutes. Grocery stores exist in actual neighborhoods, not just on commercial strips requiring highway access. The housing stock reflects this balance. Single-family homes with yards remain the norm, not the exception. 3-bedroom houses in decent school districts don't require dual-income households earning $200,000. New construction is happening, subdivisions spreading in every direction, but the sprawl hasn't yet consumed the character. As one Charlotte transplant from Brooklyn observed, "I forgot what it felt like to have a driveway. I forgot what it felt like to run an errand and be home in 20 minutes. I didn't realize how much energy I was spending just existing in a city." The metros work. Daily life functions. But there's one more factor that outweighs all the others, the one that's hardest to quantify and impossible to ignore. Number 1, momentum. Here's the reason nobody puts on the list, but everybody feels. North Carolina already has your people. Your college roommate moved to Charlotte in 2019 for a banking job. Your sister landed in Raleigh after her company went remote. Your parents are eyeing Asheville or Pinehurst for retirement. Your coworker's coworker just closed on a place in Wilmington. The network effect is real, and North Carolina crossed the threshold where it became self-reinforcing. Census Bureau data shows NC has gained population every single year since 2010. That's not a trend, that's a generational pattern. The people who moved in 2015 now have roots. They're the ones texting you Zillow listings. They're the ones saying, just come for a weekend, you'll see. They're the proof of concept that makes your own leap feel less like a leap. This is how migration works at scale. It's not just cost of living or climate or jobs, though all of those matter. It's seeing someone you trust living the life you want in a place that feels accessible, with enough familiarity to not feel like exile. Remember that 100,000 plus new residents per year. They're not all strangers. A significant portion followed someone. They saw the Instagram posts from the Blue Ridge Parkway. They heard about the schools. They noticed that friend who moved to Durham seemed calmer, less stressed, more present. North Carolina isn't selling a fantasy. It's selling proof. And every new arrival becomes part of that proof for the next wave. The weather drew them in. The cost of living did the math. The jobs gave permission. The retirees found their landing spot. The food kept them fed. The geography gave them options. The metros made daily life work, but in the end, it was their cousin, their college friend, their old neighbor, someone they trusted, living a life that seemed to work in a state they could actually afford. That's the gravity. That's the magnet. That's why the migration doesn't stop. 8 reasons. 1 pattern. North Carolina figured out something most states can't. How to grow without breaking. The infrastructure scales. The economy diversifies. The geography offers range without requiring compromise. And the cost of entry, while rising, still makes sense for people priced out of the coasts. This isn't a hidden gem anymore. It's not a secret. The U-Haul data, the census figures, the school enrollment numbers, they all point the same direction. But here's the thing. It's still working. The highways aren't parking lots. lots. The hospitals aren't overwhelmed. The restaurants take reservations without requiring 2-month lead times. The state absorbed 1 million new residents over the past decade and still functions. Whether that lasts another decade is the real question. Growth creates growth, but it also creates pressure. Ask Austin, ask Boise, ask anyone who moved somewhere affordable and watched it become not that affordable while they were still unpacking boxes. For now though, North Carolina keeps pulling people in because the math still makes sense, the lifestyle still delivers, and someone you know already made the move. If this breakdown helped you think differently about where you might land next, or confirmed something you were already feeling, drop a like. If you know someone weighing a move, send this their way. Subscribe if you want more of these deep dives on where Americans are actually going and why, and hit the comments. If you moved to North Carolina, or left it, what's the one thing nobody warned you about? I'll see you in the next one.